Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 13 of the Sports Follow 35-year reboot, lucky number 13. Today's topics include the Denver Broncos recapping their first preseason game with a particular eye on the quarterbacks, obviously. We'll also preview the Tottenham Hotspurs. Premier League is starting back up this week. And then we'll do a quick look at the Harris versus Trump presidential race. Topic number one, the Denver Broncos. Well, incredible debut for Bo Nix, if I do say so myself. He was super impressive, right? Finishing, came in, Stidham started the game. Didn't really, only played, he went 4 of 7 for 37 yards. Then they brought in Bo. Bo played, all of the second quarter, most of the first quarter. And then when it came out for the start of the second half as well. He finished up 15 of 21 for 125 yards with a touchdown pass. He really did look super strong outside the pocket. He also showed experience. I think what you're seeing now is we did a lot of talking about when a quarterback comes into the league at an age like he has with a ton of starts, 61 college starts, played for 5 years in college. This is what you're getting, right? A guy who's essentially ready to go. He looked really, really impressive out there versus the Colts. I think he really had command of the offense. He really showcased some illusion, I would say. So getting outside the pocket, he would take off and run. To me, he seems faster than I thought he was. He was really moving when he took off and ran it. I think Sean Payton was super impressed by him as well. Some of the things he was saying, and he keeps saying this all along is, we need to take less sacks. The quarterback can't be taking sacks. There were no sacks in that game. Bo Nix did not get sacked, which is really what we're all looking for. And again, more subtle jabs at Russell Wilson all along the way. It is so clear Sean Payton couldn't stand Russell Wilson. Bo Nix, command of the offense, looked great. I think the question needs to be asked at this point is, when do you, quote unquote, name an official week one starter when the season starts, right? I do think it is Bo Nix. I think all accounts it's Bo Nix. It'd be really surprising if it wasn't. You can read a bunch of different articles out there. The great Troy Rennick from Denver Post, his opinion piece on Friday, talking about, it's a done deal that Bo Nix is number one. The real question is, are you keeping two quarterbacks on the roster with Stidham and Wilson, or are you just keeping two? And then the question becomes, do you go ahead and release a Jared Stidham and then have a super young quarterback room in Bo Nix and Zach Wilson? Stidham, if you did cut him, you'd be able to save over $5 million by doing that. He's getting paid $7 million, but the cap hit would only be $2 million, so you'd net out $5 million. So you could say, okay, maybe they need that to sign a veteran if they are playing pretty well as the season progresses, right? Or do you do what they've kind of historically done and what a lot of teams do is you cut your losses with Zach Wilson. It would be a $2 million cap hit. And then you just keep Jared Stidham as the backup and kind of that veteran presence in the quarterback room. It's interesting. I think you could argue either way what you really want to do. One thing to note, I think if you did stay super young and kept Zach and Bo Nix as Bo's your starter, Zach's the backup. It's interesting to know you also have David Webb in the room, who's a former NFL quarterback. Rumblings that actually someone went after him last year while he was in his first year as quarterback coach under Payton. So he almost acts as that other emergency. So I could see a scenario if they really get into trouble. Do they pull the trigger if it's allowed and say, okay, we can't have Zach Wilson start because Nix is hurt? Do we just go ahead and have Webb suit up and play and sign him as a player/coach? Interesting scenario. I don't know if that would actually play out, but something to keep an eye on. But I think Bo Nix absolutely proved he's the real deal. They're still doing a little bit of a QB rotation yesterday on Thursday and training camp. Day 14, Stidham took the snaps with the ones. Bo Nix came in with the twos and took the snaps, and Zach with the threes. That's really setting up they're having a joint practice today with the Green Bay Packers. That's who they're going to be playing this weekend in their second preseason game. It's already been announced Bo Nix is the starter for that game, but Bo Nix will be also starting today with the ones that practice in these dual or joint practices between the Broncos and the Packers. I think it's clear we've certainly seen the promisings are it's looking good for Bo Nix. It's looking better than good right now. I think this guy is playing above average. I saw a rated look at some of the grades of the players out there, and one guy had him Bo Nix as a B plus right now, which is outstanding. Obviously, Caleb Williams was getting an A, and Jaden Daniels got an A. But to see Bo Nix in that third slot, highest rated after one preseason game, was great to see and kind of showcases where maybe the Broncos, we talked a lot about this. Did Sean Payton go after his guy? And he went after him, got him at 12, and Payton's in love with him, and it's great. The great Kay Adams was in town this week from Up and Adams, formerly of Good Morning Football and the NFL Network. Kay was in town, and it's clear, it's funny when you watch like national reporters, especially, ones like a Kay Adams coming to town, or even when you think about the other people in years past, like a Peter King. Sean Payton clearly loves talking to the national media. He has a great relationship by all accounts with Kay, and he sort of opens up more so than the local media he ever would. I think he always gets a little, not testy, but a little kind of cranky and ornery, almost like Parcells used to. I mean, he is under the Parcells tree talking to the local media. But Kay Adams really pressed him on the issue. Like, what's the holdup? Why aren't you naming him? I don't understand. Everybody knows it's going to happen. And Peyton's logic was, he's playing well. I'll name him when we're ready. We're getting closer. And he wants to respect the process, and he wants to be cognizant of the players that are in the room as well, and the veterans, et cetera, and not just suddenly anoint someone from day one. So I think we're getting closer to that. My guess is, I think if Bo Nix performs well this weekend versus the Green Bay Packers, you're going to see the official announcement come out that Bo Nix is the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos, which would be great. I think it would be great to see. I think it creates an excitement, and I think your viewership and your ratings, which is a factor in a lot of this stuff as well. Don't kid yourself; it is a factor. You're going to see more viewership tune in to see what is Bo Nix really like when the regular season starts versus what does Jared Stidham, viewership. I think there would be a collective kind of sigh or like, if we thought about the idea of Jared Stidham being the starter. One thing to note as well is the Broncos. I started to wonder about this line of the 5.5 over/under games won. I think and we talked a little bit about this last week. I really do think this team's going to win at least 6, 7. I wouldn't be surprised if they win 8 games. We'll see. It's still early on, but by all accounts, I think the Broncos now are going to be kind of sneaky good. And I would not sleep on them right now. I think that they're going to be a tough out, so to speak, when other teams play them. So, great opening preseason game for Bo Nix, and then we'll talk next week about how we did in game number 2 versus the Green Bay Packers this weekend. All right, topic number 2, the Tottenham Hotspurs. Hard to believe that Premier League is kicking off. Actually, it kicks off today. I'm recording this on Friday. There's a game tonight that'll be played. But we're back. The 2024/25 season is underway. I'm super excited. Love. We've talked a little bit about this. The love I've had for soccer now. I think it's fantastic. Tottenham Hotspurs will play on Monday to wrap up opening weekend. Looking through kind of what they did and who making some of their signings. They obviously signed up Archie Gray, who's a real young kid, a nice talent for them. Which will be really nice to see him if he debuts for the opening thing. I think we also have our latest signing, Dominic Solanke. He is, I think, going to start this weekend already. He was a great signing that we were able to get this over the last week or so. He's going to come in and help. Used to play with James Madison. There's a repertoire there. Madison was clearly excited that he's definitely playing. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they do this year. The projected lineup in one of the articles, I was reading this out of the London Standard, is we'll start with goalie Vaccaro. In the backfield, we would have Poro, Romero, Van de Ven, and Udagi. You then potentially could have Gray and Sarr, so you would start Archie Gray over like a Betancourt there. You would have James Madison, Kuliszewski, Son, Solanke. Solanke is a true number 9. I think that's what we were missing last year, in all honesty. I think they tried to have Son play that 9 role, which is really in the center attack position. He's not as comfortable there. I mean, Son's an amazing player. I love Son, but I think is better off in the wing where he can kind of create, and you can use his speed going down the side and pass it over to him. I think Solanke fills that void left by Harry Kane when Harry went over to Byron last year. Solanke's young, right up Ange's style, right up Ange's style. This guy is fast. He's got great pace, aggressive, and so I think it's going to be super interesting to watch Tottenham this year. I think by all accounts, it would be a massive disappointment if they weren't top 4 and get into Champions League next year. I think that they're absolutely going to contend. I read another article the other day about looking at the top 4 teams, and it was pretty much a consensus. It was against 7 people. All of them but one had Tottenham finishing in the top 4. Some of them had a couple of the guys had them finishing in the top 3. And then the rest obviously were in the top 4, except for one guy who had him kind of looking out being in the 5th. I don't see it. I think you're going to see a little bit of a pullback like with Liverpool. They have yet to make any signings, which is interesting to say the least. Man City's getting slightly older. Is their reign finally going to go down? And is Arsenal really going to be able to take that top seed? It's going to be a really interesting season. I can't wait to watch it. Super excited to get back into it. We'll kick this off on Monday. So for next week, we'll definitely do a recap. Tottenham is playing Leicester City, which Tottenham should win that pretty easily, I would imagine. So we'll talk about that next week when we recap how they did in their opening match. Okay, final topic for today, number 3. We've got the presidential election, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Interesting week for, I think, both. Kamala is still getting some momentum, still getting a good run, still making headway in her kind of roll out of her campaign. We're starting to see her get a little bit more, releasing videos. They really are embracing social. The Harris Waltz ticket. It's been great to see. They've released some behind the scenes footage, and really, I think what they're doing a really good job is not really saying stupid things like the other side is saying. If you look at Donald Trump this week, another classic Trump thing, had a news conference yesterday at his club in New Jersey, Bedminster, Trump National Golf Club, the private club there. Played a round of golf, then had a news conference, had props set up on stage of various food items, cereal, coffee, eggs, bacon, stuff like that. And he was it was supposed to be, the stump or the news conference was really supposed to be all about, inflation, right? Like it's super expensive. Inflation's out of control. We got to tame it. Got to look down on it. And of course, Trump can't stay on script, right? So he starts going off script, and it's like he's holding his grievances publicly, right? He's going off on Kamala, saying, I'm entitled to call her weird. I think she is weird. I don't think she's very bright. Mispronouncing her name as usual. But really, getting into more of that name calling that he's so into doing, which is just, to me, there's an old saying, when they go low, we stay high, and this is exactly what Harris Waltz ticket is doing. They are taking the high road right now. Trump off script says weird things again. Like he said, at one point I was watching a clip and he's referencing the props that were all set up, saying how beautiful they were and what a great job they were to be set up. And he sees the box of Cheerios and says, we're going to bring back the Cheerios back to my cabin and we're going to have some fun with it. And I thought, what does that even mean? Like, he's just out there rambling. He's clearly still very upset. He referenced again the fact that she's on the cover of, say, Time magazine, and he's not. Why isn't he? He is upset with the coverage that she's getting and the momentum that she holds. If we look at kind of the polls where they are, these polls are being updated. Let's see, real clear politics, and then I'm referencing real clear polling. Clearly, I'm struggling to say real, but it's real clear polling. The average again is Harris +1, so virtually a dead heat. Various polls, we just look at them. Emerson has Harris at 50, Trump at 46. Rasmussen is flipped around, Harris at 45, Trump at 49. What's some other ones? CBS News is 50 to 49, so 50 for Harris, 49 for Trump. NPR, PBS Marist poll is 51 for Harris, 48 for Trump. So you aggregate those together, it's looking like a +1. If you scroll and you go to the website, scroll down, they have a great line chart here that they lay out, kind of the recap, and they track it over various dates. This is right now dating back to February 17th, 2024. What you're seeing now is a slight dip in both candidates, right? But it's that margin is still there. The margin is holding with Harris. She's about, it's been about this margin, around 1% the entire time. The only time it really wasn't was he was in the lead right after Biden withdrew, and then she caught up quickly as of August 5th is where she made her kind of jumped over him, and you'll see in the chart she kind of just keeps going at that point. And then he's kind of just leveled out. He's always at this 46-ish, 47%. He does not go up, which is really, really interesting to see. It's like he cannot break through, which shows you that that's his thing and that's where he is. So when you look at the New York Times opinion piece, it was really about maps, right? And the kind of the path to victory, and how this election is really just coming down to the 7 swing states. Those states are Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. Her path is much clearer because she's leading in a lot of these states as well. And so her path to get to the count needed of 270 is a lot easier. They start off with, essentially, you can look at it as right now, when the election closes and it comes in based off of the electoral votes, right? Kamala Harris already has 226 votes. Trump has 219 votes. You need 270 to win, which leads 93 votes up in the air, right? And those are the states we just referenced there. And this kind of paints a picture here. The first path for Kamala is to carry Pennsylvania. That's the state Biden did by 80,000 votes. I assume that she's going to win that just because of, I think it's a similar kind of story. A lot of the votes coming from Pennsylvania. A lot of the votes coming from Philadelphia, rather. And she should do this. That'll get her up to 245, and then at that point, she has 6 paths to 270. And scenario number 1, they're saying, is she would need Michigan and Wisconsin. She does that, and it's over at that point, right? She wins the election. Or she can win Wisconsin and Georgia if she doesn't win those states. She can also then at that point win Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. She could win Michigan and Arizona. She could then take Michigan and Georgia, Georgia or Arizona, and then the second path does not require winning Pennsylvania. Instead, she would need to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and then Arizona. So if she loses Pennsylvania, she still has a path for victory, right? And then Trump, it gets a little bit more dicey, right? It's a little harder for him, right? What they're saying, it's difficult to see how Trump would win if he cannot carry North Carolina. He should carry it, right? And that would get him up to 235 electoral votes. Then he needs a lot of help, right? He's got to take Georgia at that point. And then if he takes Georgia, he really needs Pennsylvania. If he takes Pennsylvania, he wins the election at that point. Scenario number 2 is Michigan and Nevada. This is all assuming he takes North Carolina and Georgia, right? He then takes Michigan and Arizona as well. He wins. Arizona and Wisconsin, he wins. And then this is the more difficult path. So he only has 4 clear scenarios on one side to get there. The second is much more difficult. And it enables him, if he carried North Carolina, but he loses Georgia, he's in trouble at that point, right? This is hard. He's got to take Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, or Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. It's a tough path. I mean, if this keeps up right now, she's building momentum. She's staying out of kind of the headlines, is what I think they're really doing with her as well. And so you're seeing her just stay under the radar somewhat, build her momentum. Her fundraising numbers are still high. If we were to do a quick search on to see her fundraising numbers, it was 310 last week. And it looks like she's even there. She's raised a record amount leading up to the DNC. And so she's just really, really gaining momentum. And next week, Monday, starts the Democratic National Convention, where you're going to see a ton of speeches, and you can expect a bump. Her bump is probably going to go up. So that, well, let's see, the average was she's at 47.9. I would expect another 1 to 2 point bump, and at that point, she could potentially be looking at a 2 to 3 percentage point lead over Trump. The next key dates after that, obviously, we're gonna have the debate on September 10th on ABC News. That'll be Kamala versus Donald, and then you have coming up on October 1st the VPs, Tim versus JD. Looking forward to seeing how this all transpires. Big week next week for the Harris-Walz campaign at the DNC, where it's just a formality. She's already secured enough delegates, so she'll officially accept the nomination for president. All right, this has been the Sports File, a 35-year reboot. Please like, subscribe, or leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcast, and I'll talk to you next week.